Our last partnership is the Quality Education India Development Impact Bond.
मैंने उससे पूछा कि आपने पिक्चर्स में क्या देखा। अच्छा, लोमड़ी थी। लोमड़ी कैसी लगती है? बहुत चालाक लगती है। शेर कैसा लगता है? डरावना लगता है मैम। अच्छा, तो कहानी में क्या हो रहा होगा?
मेरा नाम रागिनी शर्मा है। सार्ड संस्था के साथ मैं पिछले 4 साल से काम कर रही हूँ।
It was March 2020 and news had just started coming in about the devastating impact of India's COVID-19 lockdowns. We were seeing on our screens tens of millions of migrants walking back to their villages across India and many, many children as part of them. As I watched the television, it suddenly hit me quite hard that all these children would be out of school. With that context, it suddenly also then dawned on me one of the most ambitious and most creative projects I'd ever been involved with in my career was in its second year of implementation with a focus on educating these children to ensuring that they learn at school. And that project would potentially have to come to a grinding halt because of a circumstance that none of us had imagined. Let me take you back a few years prior to that, where many sort of experts in education alongside us, the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, the UBS Optimus Foundation, many leading non-profits, all of us came together to say it was brilliant that 99% of India's children were in school, but the fact that they were not still learning at the level they should be learning was a challenge that we should collectively address. And in that collective wisdom emerged the Quality Education India DIB, focusing on 200,000 children and their learning in schools across many states in India. But now these children were at home, and after 2 years of excellent, almost exponential learning gains under this program, we were sort of facing a crossroad where we might have to close it. And that was the point where I would say this partnership was tested, and we found the resilience and the courage to say, if a true partnership has to work, it has to work under adversity. We went back to our partners on the ground, sat with them, tried to understand how we could think about learning in different contexts, if any of the targets we'd set would work in those contexts. We talked to our evaluators to see whether they could change the paradigm of evaluation. With all that, the kind of creativity I saw, I don't think I've ever seen before, and it will be a long time before I see that again. But we kept going. We knew that even if we might fail in terms of our impact, we would be serving the children that we had sought to serve. And we'd be giving data to the system to show how learning happens during a crisis. And the results for that are out to show. We did end up having excellent results for the children, which was hugely satisfying. But more importantly, we showed how when philanthropy, private investment, and other kinds of finance works effectively and collaboratively, there can be exponential, almost catalytic change. We can show that talent, when applied under adversity, can also think, and when there's a flexibility to it, can also think outside the box and still serve communities. The Education Impact Bond is a testimony to the passion of many people, many heads, many communities, and most of all to the children who did so well under this program.
चह चह चिरई चहके जब मदमस्त चले बयार रे.
બધાને ખબર છે કે કોરોનાનો સમય લગભગ આપણે વિચાર્યો ના હોય એવો હતો, અને એ કોરોના સમયે બાળક શાળાએ નહોતા આવી શકતા. ત્યારે એમણે મહોલ્લા શિક્ષણ ચાલુ કર્યું. ગામની જ કમ્યુનિટીમાંથી જે ભણેલી બહેનો હતી એમને એમના લીડર તરીકે લીધી, અને એ બહેનો એમના ઘરમાં અથવા તો જે તે બાળકના મહોલ્લામાં જઈને ભણાવતી હતી.
મારું નામ કોળી પટેલ સોનલબેન વાસુભાઈ છે. ધોરણ 12 લગન અભ્યાસ કર્યો છે. पहले दिवस तो 15-20 बालक आए थे, तो हमने उनको समझाया नहीं आएंगे तो पीछे रह जाएंगे. तो दूसरे दिन सब बच्चे आ गए.
representing that partnership, we have Abha Thorat-Shah.
I'll kick this one off. First off, thanks so much for sharing the story and for the work that you all are doing. It really is an exciting and creative, innovative solution to improving educational outcomes. I'm sort of curious, the outcomes that you've seen from this are particularly impressive, like that 50% step change that the implementing partners saw compared to prior grant programs. What do you think contributed in the structure of the DIB to that difference in performance? And then how did you go about selecting the implementing partners for this as well? Because that obviously seems quite crucial to this.
Thank you for the question. So firstly, I represent all those brilliant partners. I'm just the messenger on behalf of them. But I'll name check the four implementing partners that you ask about: the Kaivalya Education Foundation, Pratham Infotech, Education Initiatives, Gyanshala, and SARD, the real heroes of our story. I'm just the director at the back. So the selection of the partners I'll do first. There are several brilliant partners in India. India doesn't lack good partners. What we lack, perhaps as funders, is the ability to see what works and when, because India is a diverse, big subcontinent, and in different contexts, different solutions work. And the DIB enables us to do that. In Ahmedabad, in a low-income rural community, it's very different from an urban community in Delhi. Some communities might need pedagogy, the other community might need government partnership. Some might need a direct model, some an indirect model. So what we had to do in this first ambitious, scaled-up project was to select one of every type. We were spoiled for choice, but not everybody wanted to do it, because the reputational loss of doing something like this, which is so transparent and almost naked in terms of your results, is pretty big for a nonprofit who's seeking funding. So I think it sort of celebrates the bravery of these organizations who said, we're up for that data piece. We haven't done this before. We've not had these results before. Each year's learning gain was the target for next year's baseline, which is not easy if you've done that kind of stuff. So huge reputational challenges taken on by the partners, and the selection was one of every type of intervention, so that we were fair to the sort of the variety that India could give to the funding landscape.
Picking up from there, in terms of the DIB ran for 2 years, and so how have these learnings kind of resulted in larger impact in the country, as well as replication of the model? How do you see that happening going forward?
So Himanshu, it ran for 4 years. One of the things people don't talk about development impact bonds is the long-term nature of this funding. Outcomes are long-term, messy, and they take a lot of people to make it work. And that flexibility in long-term, I think, is the untold story of a development impact bond. But the future of this, as I think you know as you're a fellow country person, is that there are several new projects in the market in skills, in FL, in foundation literacy and numeracy that Government of India has sort of put its mark on. And we're seeing a growth of not just the funding, but the investment coming in. UBS Optimus, our partner, now has the SDG Outcomes Fund, a $100 million fund. We see the Education Outcomes Fund in Africa. So the ripple effects of this that started with Educate Girls and now went into the sector in India is now becoming more systemic in the country in several sectors, but also into other countries. So huge learning. I'll point to one thing. Growth is normally seen as more numbers of people going through the same program. As we see growth in these projects, it's about the efficiency of funding used. There isn't enough money in education and it's not growing. And during COVID, we actually saw money go away from education. So for us, that efficiency of every dollar or rupee spent in education is our real story. And hopefully one day we'll tell that story that you can get better bang for your buck.
That's actually a really interesting reflection, because I was very impressed reading your application that it was the biggest development bond in education, 300, right? Am I correct? 200, which is huge. And as you're saying, it was like a big test because there were many players in the market. How is that size a good size? Is it too big? Is it too small? Does it have to do with the development of, I mean, how do you see that coming from your experience? Is this something that will be replicated easily and it can be replicated at a bigger scale?
So in India, we say no one gets out of bed when you aren't working on less than 4 states or in the millions. So the next project is in the millions. So at that stage, for that context, it was big because everybody said these are small, they're not replicable, there's one partner, it's all, this lab effect, does it really work outside the lab? And we wanted to prove all that wrong and prove all that possible. So today, if you ask me, I don't think it's big enough. At that stage, we thought we'd bitten off more than we'd chewed. It's always a sort of a look back at. Scale is the game in India. The government wants scale, we want scale, the sector wants scale. And within that scale, there has to be efficiency. And the numbers have to grow for it to work. And at what cost does it work? I keep coming back to that because there's just not enough money. So what we do have for the government out of this is a tool, a cost effectiveness toolkit that enables them to see what works under which context and at what price.
Well, thank you for the great presentation and great questions already, and wonderful, wonderful program. Congratulations. And a question from me is particularly with the Dell Foundation involved, just curious if there was a sort of digital technology aspect to these overall partnerships that worked really well, or in retrospect, were there specific areas where you wish there could have been more technology used?
So I'll tell you 2 things. Yes, we did have an EdTech partner in this, but it was a community-based EdTech partner, and it had one of the best results in our partnership as well. When COVID hit, Indian children went online, but urban, rich Indian children went online. Our rural children didn't go online, and our girls definitely didn't go online. There used to be one mobile phone. 14% of rural India had technology. So when we said to our partners, oh, do EdTech, everyone's talking about EdTech. My kids are here sitting at home learning in front of the computer. They went, there's no electricity, there's no computer, it's not happening. So the way we saw it, we actually had to redefine what remote meant for us. Remote didn't mean only technology. It was I think the word they invented was phygital, which is a combination of physical and digital. I still slip on it. But it was the ability to use digital when you needed within the community, and mostly it was about people going into the community. So digital was part of the solution, but had to be adopted. Secondly, it wasn't just computers or devices, it was television. It was sort of it was radio, it was WhatsApp. It was things that you didn't expect to think as part of digital. It wasn't some fancy technology. It was just everyday stuff repurposed to reach teachers, redone to make sure it worked. Ensuring that parents who suddenly were interested in their children, remember teachers were doing COVID relief and all kinds of other things, were able to engage with the material that was coming, and then they could monitor it. So it wasn't what I thought it would be, a sort of learning app where everybody was there, like my children at home. It was something very different and actually quite revolutionary for us as a group.
Wow, that's so interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I hadn't heard that term before. And shameless plug, here at HP, we are dedicated to advancing digital equity for over 150 million people by 2030. So let's talk.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Abha.
Thank you very much.